So I've worked in emergency medicine for 10 years, and a few days ago I made a video about the 6 markers that I think everybody should be checking. So that's your blood pressure, your resting heart rate, your kidney function, your blood sugar, your cholesterol, and your liver function. The core message of that video is that most of the serious emergencies that we see develop very silently over years and are very much largely preventable. And so catching these numbers early gives you time to act. That video has absolutely exploded. And the single question I keep seeing in the comments, the thing that so many of you are asking about is, okay, I've got my results, I know my numbers, but now what do I do? How do I actually make them better? Well, if you haven't seen that first video, then go and watch it, and I'll link it below somewhere in the description. Because in that video, what I do is go through what each marker actually is. I talk about why it matters, what it actually does to your body when it goes wrong, and then the target numbers to actually aim for. This video is very different. This one is purely about action. So almost like a follow-up to that first video, if you like. And before I go through each marker, I just want to mention a few things. So a lot of you have actually commented that your doctor told you your results were fine, but you don't feel fine. And here's the thing, that's not you being dramatic, and it's not necessarily your doctor lying to you either. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. And this is on about the blood tests here. So the reference ranges on blood test results are built around population averages, and normal and optimal are not the same thing. In this video, I'm going to give you the targets to aim for, not just the lines to stay under, if that makes sense. I'm going to give you one change per marker. So there's going to be 6 changes in this video that you can make. And these are all grounded in landmark research that you can start today or this week or whenever. And for several of these, the research shows that the effect matches or even exceeds what the medications would achieve. Now, if any of you know me, you know that I'm not anti-medication. I prescribe it all the time and I believe in it. But the honest truth is that for a significant proportion of people, lifestyle change done properly and early is more powerful than the pill that I can prescribe you. But here's the thing that I really want you to understand before we go through these 6 markers. And this is the part that genuinely excites me about lifestyle medicine. So these interventions don't just help the marker they are attached to, they help all of them. Walking every day doesn't just lower your blood pressure, it improves your blood sugar, it raises your HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol, it reduces your resting heart rate, and it protects your kidneys. Increasing the fibre and protein in your diet doesn't just stabilise your HbA1c, it lowers your triglycerides, it reduces your cardiovascular risk as well. Cutting out liquid sugar doesn't just lower your HbA1c and improve your lipid profile, it takes direct pressure off your liver and your pancreas simultaneously. This is the fundamental difference between lifestyle medicine and prescribing a tablet. A blood pressure tablet like amlodipine or ramipril lowers your blood pressure. That is it. That's all it does. But when you walk every day, or you increase your fitness, or you overhaul the quality of what you eat, you improve multiple things at the same time. You improve pretty much every system in your body, from your heart and your kidneys to your brain and your muscles, all at once. The changes compound over time, the benefits overlap, and the total effect on your long-term health and your risk of serious disease and your chance of ending up in A&E in front of me is far greater than the sum of the individual parts. That is what we're building towards here. That is what this entire channel is all about. So the first marker is blood pressure, and the intervention is just walking. That is it. Walking is completely free, and it's what we do all the time. Now, the target for your blood pressure really should be below 120/80 consistently at rest. Not just one good reading on a good day, but consistently all the time. And if you want to really understand why elevated blood pressure is so damaging, what it actually does to your heart and to your kidneys and your brain over time, then go and watch that first video and the other videos that I've got on blood pressure. And I'll link that video below, because that is where I cover all of that in a bit more detail. For now, the single change with the strongest evidence behind it is sustained aerobic exercise. And for most people, the most accessible form of that is walking. Now, a really big meta-analysis published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine analysed over 390 separate randomised control trials and found that exercise was actually as effective as blood pressure medication at reducing blood pressure in people with hypertension. 30 minutes of brisk walking done most days of the week produced average reductions of around 8 to 10 points, 8 to 10 millimeters of mercury in systolic blood pressure in people whose readings were elevated. And to put that into perspective, a standard first-line blood pressure medication typically reduces systolic pressure by around 9 points, 9 millimeters of mercury. Now, the mechanism is really well understood. We know that regular aerobic exercise improves the elasticity of your blood vessel walls. It reduces the peripheral resistance and it lowers your resting activation of the sympathetic nervous system. And as I said at the start, this is where the compounding effect begins, because that same daily walk is simultaneously improving your blood sugar regulation, it's supporting your kidney function, and it's beginning to lower your resting heart rate, which I'll get onto in a moment. If your blood pressure is consistently above 130/85 and you're not yet regularly active, then this is where to start. The second one is your resting heart rate. Now, a healthy resting heart rate sits somewhere between 50 and 70 beats per minute for most adults. It's lower in people who exercise regularly, and as I said in that other video, the lowest I've seen actually set the alarm bells off in the A&E, and we all came running, and he was the fittest man we've ever seen. So lower is better to a point. If it's in the 30s, then we're getting a bit concerned there, obviously. If yours is sitting above 80 or trending upwards over time, then that is a really important signal, and it's worth taking seriously. Now, I mentioned walking for blood pressure, and walking is really valuable. I've mentioned this lots of times across this channel. But to really meaningfully shift your resting heart rate, you need to push harder than just a brisk walk. What drives the adaptation is getting your heart rate into a moderate to vigorous zone and sustaining it there. So getting your heart rate up quite high. So that means running or cycling or swimming or rowing or HIIT workouts, anything that has you working hard enough that holding a conversation is really difficult. You've got to be panting a bit here. The reason this matters physiologically is basically because the heart is a muscle, and like any muscle, it adapts to the demands that you place on it. Now, sustained higher intensity cardio forces the heart to pump more blood per beat, and over time, it simply becomes so efficient at doing that, it needs to beat less frequently at rest. A large-scale study published in Heart, this followed over 29,000 people, and it found that low cardiorespiratory fitness was one of the strongest independent predictors of cardiovascular mortality, stronger than hypertension, stronger than obesity, stronger than elevated cholesterol in certain analyses. For every 10 beats per minute reduction in resting heart rate achieved through training, mortality risk dropped dramatically. Now, the target is really a minimum of 75 minutes of vigorous cardio per week, or 150 minutes at moderate intensity. And the resting heart rate adaptation is measurable within 6 to 8 weeks of consistent effort. And you can track this really easily by getting just a cheap fitness watch. You can get these really cheaply on Amazon, or if you want to spend a bit more money, you can get a Garmin, which is really good for lots of different things. And again, this isn't isolated. Improving your cardiorespiratory fitness simultaneously lowers your blood pressure, it improves your insulin sensitivity, it reduces your triglycerides, and it protects your kidney function, as well as building muscle and massively improving your mood and your mental health. One change affects multiple systems. Okay, let's move on to blood sugar now. So HbA1c is a measure of your average blood sugar over the past 2 to 3 months. The target here in the UK is below 42. In the US, that use a percentage, it's below 5.7%. And it's worth mentioning fasting insulin as well, because lots of you have been talking about this. But obviously, you're probably going to have to pay for that test, because most healthcare systems don't offer that as standard. Now, a target below 8 microunits per mil can tell you years in advance that insulin resistance is developing before your HbA1c has moved at all. Now, cutting ultra-processed food is massively important. That is often what people say in this sort of setting. But for a lot of people, it's just too vague to be actionable on its own. So the specific intervention with the strongest evidence here is this: deliberately and consistently adding protein and fibre to your diet. Now, a massive meta-analysis published in The Lancet, one of the biggest journals that we have, analysing data from over 135 million person-years of research, found that people with the highest dietary fibre intake had a 15 to 30% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those with the lowest fibre intake, and a much lower HbA1c level across the board. And the mechanism here is really straightforward. The fibre that you eat slows the digestion and absorption of carbohydrates. It blunts the glucose spike that comes after what you eat. And as a result, it reduces the insulin demand on the pancreas over time. Now, protein has a complementary effect. It increases your satiety, or how full you are. It reduces overall carbohydrate intake naturally, and it has a minimal direct impact on your blood sugar. A study published in Diabetes Care found that increasing dietary protein intake massively improved the glycemic control in people with elevated blood sugar, independent of how many calories you ate. Now, in practical terms, this means building meals around vegetables and legumes and whole grains and eggs and fish and meat first. Foods that are high in fibre or protein or both, rather than around refined carbohydrates first that digest really rapidly and spike your glucose. And the overlap here is significant. The same dietary shift that stabilizes your blood sugar is directly reducing your triglycerides, supporting your liver, and lowering your risk of cardiovascular disease all at the same time. The fourth marker is all about your triglycerides and your cholesterol, and the intervention here is eliminating liquid sugar and sweets. And this might be a bit counterintuitive for some people. You'd think lowering your cholesterol involves cutting out fat rather than sugar. This is why it's so important. And if you want to learn a bit more about this specific point, then please do watch that first video. Now, your total cholesterol number on its own is a bit of a blunt instrument. What actually tells you far more is the ratio of your triglycerides to your HDL cholesterol, the protective cholesterol. A high triglyceride to HDL ratio is actually one of the better indicators of cardiovascular and metabolic risk that a standard lipid profile can actually give you. In the UK, a ratio of below 1.5 is a sensible target. In the US, where things are measured a bit differently, we're aiming for below 3.5. Now, reducing added sugar is the intervention that moves your triglycerides most directly, but just saying cut out added sugar is almost as vague as just saying eat better. So I want to be really specific about where most people's added sugar actually comes from, because the evidence points very clearly at particular sources. So liquid sugar, so we're talking about fizzy drinks, fruit juices, energy drinks, really sweetened coffees, is by far the most impactful source to eliminate first. A study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that people who got 25% or more of their daily calories from added sugar had nearly 3 times the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease compared to those who kept added sugar below 10%. And liquid sugar was the dominant source in the high intake group. Now, the reason this is so important, and I mentioned this in a couple of videos about the liver specifically, is that the liver processes fructose from liquid sources extremely rapidly, with very little opportunity for the body to regulate intake, which is why drinks drive triglyceride production so efficiently. After liquid sugar, the next most impactful sources are confectionery, so things like sweets and chocolate bars and biscuits, and ultra-processed snacks where the sugar is the primary ingredient. Removing these specifically, rather than trying to overhaul everything at once, produces really good reductions in fasting triglycerides within around 2 to 4 weeks. Right then, your kidney function now. So the thing that improves your kidney function massively, and the thing that I talk about all the time across this channel, is sugar and insulin. But we've already talked about that. So let's talk instead about staying consistently well hydrated. Now, the kidney marker to know about is eGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate. Basically, it tells you how efficiently your kidneys are filtering your blood. And this is the blood test that doctors refer to all the time. Above 90 is normal. Between 60 and 90 warrants a bit of monitoring, although if you're over the age of, say, 70, then this can be normal as well. Below 60, sustained over more than 3 months, starts to indicate pretty significant kidney disease. Again, unless you are particularly old, because we know that your kidney function declines with age. Now, as I said, sugar and insulin and also blood pressure as well are the most important interventions for your kidney protection. And, we've covered those already. So for this marker, we want to focus on something that is independently really powerful and often really completely overlooked. And it doesn't overlap with anything else we've talked about here. And it's hydration. So chronic low-grade dehydration is one of the most under-recognized contributors to a declining kidney function that we know of. And the evidence around staying hydrated is absolutely massive. So a major study published in the Journal of the American Society of Nephrology followed over 3,000 people and found that higher water intake was independently associated with a significantly slower decline in kidney function over time, even after controlling for things like blood pressure and diabetes and other risk factors. We know that the kidneys rely on adequate fluid to regulate concentrations of things and to filter waste and to flush out substances that are toxic to the nephrons at high concentrations. Chronic mild dehydration over time forces the kidneys to work harder to concentrate urine. And if you sustain that over years or decades, this creates a very low-level physiological stress that accumulates over time. Now, the target that most nephrologists or kidney doctors would point to is around 2 to 2.5 litres of water per day for most people. Not everyone, because there are certain medical conditions where we need to restrict how much you're drinking. So just discuss it with your doctor first if you're concerned. And this doesn't mean sports drinks or fruit juice. It means water or things like tea as well. The signal to pay attention to really is the colour of your urine. Pale yellow is where you want to be. Dark yellow consistently means that your kidneys are under more strain than they need to be. And it's worth noting that the same walking habit improving your blood pressure and the same dietary changes improving your blood sugar and your liver function are all simultaneously reducing the metabolic burden on your kidneys. And finally, we're talking about your liver function now. So the one change here is actually replacing refined carbs with whole grains and legumes. So the liver markers to know about are your ALT and your AST, enzymes that leak into the bloodstream when your liver cells are under stress. Now, mildly elevated levels almost always tell a metabolic story, and the most common cause is fatty liver disease driven by your diet. The liver has a remarkable capacity to recover when the cause is removed, but the intervention needs to be very specific. Now, just telling you to reduce your refined carbohydrates is a very good start, but what the evidence actually points to is not just removing something, but replacing it with something even better. A landmark study published in the Journal of Hepatology, or the Study of the Liver, found that swapping out refined carbohydrates, so things like white bread or white pasta or white rice, processed cereals, pastries, with whole grains, so things like legumes, and minimally processed whole foods, led to significant reductions in liver fat and also normalization of liver enzymes within 8 to 12 weeks. And the mechanism works in 2 directions. So whole grains and legumes digest very slowly. They reduce the surge of glucose and fructose that the liver has to process after each meal. And they're also rich in fibre, which supports the gut microbiome in ways that independently reduce the inflammation in the liver as well. Now, a follow-up study in the journal called Gut found that dietary fibre intake was directly and inversely associated with the severity of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. So basically, more fibre means less liver fat and lower enzyme levels as well. Now, in practical terms, this means swapping out white bread for whole grains, not just sliced brown bread. That's basically the same. It means swapping out white rice for things like quinoa or mixed grain packs that you can get as well, or lentils or beans, and replacing processed breakfast cereals with oats, or preferably things like an omelette or smoked salmon with some salad and some feta cheese as well. Now, these are not dramatic changes, but it does require a bit of thought. And they shift the metabolic environment of the liver really dramatically and consistently. And the studies show reductions in liver fat of around 20 or 40% over a few months through this dietary substitution alone. No medication required, because there isn't one available for this sort of thing. And the compounding effect here is particularly significant. So the same dietary shift protecting your liver, again, I've mentioned this so many times, it's also protecting your blood sugar, it improves your lipid ratio, and it reduces your cardiovascular risk as well. What I want to do at the end of this video is give you something really practical. But let me just say first that if you found this video useful or you got some value from it, then please, 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 just quickly like the video and hit the subscribe button. It helps more than I can tell you. I really, really do appreciate it. And look, from the practical side, here is a list of what you need to ask your doctor for. So you need to ask your doctor for a full blood count. You need to ask for, well, what we call a metabolic panel, including your liver function tests and your kidney function tests as well. Ask for a lipid panel as well. And if you can, try and get a fasting insulin. Although, to be honest, on the NHS, you're not going to get that for free. You'll have to pay for it. Now, you need to ask for a copy of your results. You are entitled to them. And having them means that you can track your own trends year on year, rather than relying on somebody else to notice a gradual shift. If something comes back slightly abnormal and you're told not to worry about it, then don't just leave it there. It is completely reasonable to ask, well, what would make this more concerning, and when should we recheck it, and what else can I do in the meantime? That is not being difficult. That is being a great patient. That is being engaged with your health. And the final thing I want to leave you with, and it's the thing that I said at the beginning, but I just want to reiterate it because it's the most important thing in this video, is that if you take a blood pressure tablet, your blood pressure will come down. That is the outcome. It is a meaningful outcome and it is essential for many people. But if instead, or alongside that, you start walking every day, you build your fitness up, you increase your fibre and your protein in your diet, you cut out liquid sugar, you drink more water, and you swap refined carbs for whole grains and legumes, then you are not just lowering your blood pressure, you are simultaneously improving your insulin sensitivity, you are reducing your triglycerides, you are protecting your kidney, you are reversing fatty liver disease, you are lowering your resting heart rate and reducing your risk of heart attack and stroke and type 2 diabetes and dementia and death. All at once. Every single change in this video helps every single marker that we've discussed. And that is not a coincidence. It is the nature of metabolic health. It is so powerful. Everything is connected. The heart, the kidneys, the liver, the brain, they are all downstream of the same fundamental inputs. How you move, what you eat, and how consistently you do both. A prescription targets one node in that system. Lifestyle change improves the whole system. That is the beauty of it. And it is available to all of us, and it's free, and there's no side effects.